Peter Pan and Wendy, Chapter 7, Great Adventures. Peter, who was very wise by fits and starts, thought it would be safer for Wendy, John, and Michael to live as a general rule in the house below the ground, for he was under the delusion that this dwelling place had never yet been discovered by Hook and never would be. So he had the three newcomers measured for a hollow tree apiece, and after a little practice they were able to go up and down quite easily. It is done by a peculiar system of drawing in and letting out one's breath, and they simply loved the underground home. It was one large room with strong mushrooms, excellent seats springing out of the floor, and a sawed-off tree trunk which grew about 2 feet daily, and could be used as a table and then sawed down again. The fireplace was enormous, the bed was huge, and there was a tiny little recess in the wall, curtained off and exquisitely furnished, which was the apartment of Tinkerbell. It was just as well that Wendy was so motherly and so housekeeperly and so fond of cooking, sewing, and mending, for what with the 8 boys and Peter to look after, she had more than enough to do. Occasionally, for weeks together, she never put her nose above ground. She made them delicious meals of grated coconuts, baked pig, roasted breadfruit, fried bananas, boiled yams, and other splendid foods. But sometimes Peter chose to have a make-believe meal instead of a real one. It was all the same to him. And then the rest of the family had to go hungry until night, when Wendy would bring them secret platefuls in bed. After they were asleep, she always had any amount of patching and darning to do. As for the healing of stockings, it was endless, but she enjoyed it. The pet orphan wolf, which she once had pretended about, had soon discovered her and followed her continually. She was as happy as the day was long. You may wonder, did Wendy never think of her dear father and mother and Nana and the nursery left behind in England? Well, it was this way. She didn't worry. She felt sure they would leave the nursery window open so that the children could return whenever they wished. It was unfortunate that John and Michael had such short memories. John could only remember his parents in a half-hearted way, and Michael was beginning to believe that Wendy was really his mother. She asked them questions and set them examination papers about their old home, in which the other boys joined without a hope of knowing the answers. But all the time, the 3 little darlings went on forgetting more and more. One reason was that there were so many thrilling adventures, different ones every day, more than one can possibly tell, but all worth telling. For instance, there was the night attack by the Redskins, when several of them stuck in the hollow trees and had to be pulled out like corks. There was Tinkerbell's attempt to kidnap Wendy with the help of some low, vulgar fairies, by having her, when asleep, conveyed to the mainland on a huge floating leaf. Luckily, the leaf gave way, and Wendy awoke and swam back. There was the adventure of the pirate's cake, which they cooked, you will remember, so that the boys might perish after eating it. Wendy discovered this cake, cunningly concealed in one place after another, and rescued the children from its perils so often that in the end it left off being rich and juicy. It became as hard as a stone, and you could hit people with it, and Hook tripped over it in the dark. There was also the lion's adventure. in which Peter, surrounded by roaring beasts, drew a magic circle round him on the ground with an arrow and dared any lion to cross it. And there was the fight with the redskins at the gulch, when Peter suddenly changed sides and made his band change too, so that the Peterites, having all become redskins, the redskins had, for the time being, to become lost boys. These and many more excitements, one a day at least, account for the mild nursery times fading out of people's memories. But the most remarkable adventure of all, perhaps, was the saving of Tiger Lily in the Mermaid's Lagoon. It happened like this. The mermaids lived in the lagoon, which was full of charming rainbow bubbles. They liked to bask upon Maruna's rock, lazily combing out their long, thick hair. They were not exactly shy, but they were not interested in Wendy and the boys. Peter would chat with them by the hour, yet if anybody else came along, the mermaids would turn a cold shoulder and splash a cold tail and dive. They were decidedly unsociable to strangers. One fine warm day, the children had all been swimming and were now resting on Maruna's rock after their dinner. Wendy was busy sewing, but while she stitched, the sun went in, the air grew chilly and so dark she could not see to thread her needle. A shiver ran across the water. Certainly some danger was at hand. What was that soft chunk, chunk approaching? It was the sound of muffled oars. Wendy would not waken the others because she liked them to have a good half-hour's doze after their midday meal, but Peter always slept with one ear open. He gave a cry that roused the rest as he sprang to his feet and listened. "Pirates!" he cried, and "Dive!" he shouted. The next instant not a creature could be seen upon the rock. The pirate dinghy, with its muffled oars, came up. There were 3 people in it: Smee, the boatswain, the scoundrelly Starkey, and the beautiful redskin princess, Tiger Lily. Her wrists were tied together, so were her ankles. She knew she was going to be left to drown upon the rock, which was submerged at high tide. But she was too proud to plead for mercy. She had been taken prisoner just as she was boarding the pirate vessel with a knife in her mouth. Hook was going to make an example of her. Peter and Wendy, keeping well out of sight, were bobbing up and down behind the rock. Wendy was crying at the sad fate in store for Tiger Lily, but Peter meant to save her. He knew he was clever enough to do it, and he imitated the voice of Hook. "Ahoy there, you lubbers!" he bawled out of the dark. "Oh, the captain!" cried the pirates, but they could not perceive him anywhere. They supposed he must be swimming out to them. They answered him, "We are just putting the redskin on the rock." They were greatly surprised at Hook's voice making reply. "Set her free! Cut the cords! Let her go!" "Free?" they gasped. But Captain, you ordered us to—" "Let her go at once!" bellowed the false Hook, "or you shall feel my claw, I promise you." Smee and Starkey were utterly dumbfounded. They cut Tiger Lily's bonds, and she slipped like an eel into the water. Peter and Wendy were overjoyed for a moment, but in the same moment the real Hook's voice rang over the lagoon. "Boat ahoy!" The real Hook was swimming to the boat, and before the eyes of Peter and Wendy he reached it. He climbed in and sat with his head on his hook, very gloomy and lost in thought. The 2 pirates asked, "Is all well, Captain?" but the hollow groan was the only answer. At last Hook answered violently. "The game is up. We are beaten. Beaten, I tell you. Those boys have found a mother." What's a mother?" said Smee. "He doesn't know," exclaimed Wendy, thoroughly shocked. Peter pulled her down under the water, but Hook had already started up. "What was that?" he cried. Starkey lifted his lantern to light up the lagoon, but all they could see was the Never-bird sitting on her eggs in her floating nest, where she had been left undisturbed by Peter's command. The pirates thought deeply. "Captain," said Smee, "what if we should kidnap the boy's mother and make her our own mother?" "Glorious!" cried Hook. "We will seize the boys and drown them, and take Wendy to be our mother." "Never!" cried Wendy from the water. "What was that?" But Wendy had bobbed down again. The three pirates climbed upon the rock, and suddenly Hook demanded, "Where is the redskin girl?" They supposed this was a little joke, and Smee answered with a chuckle, "Oh, that's all right, Captain. We let her go according to your orders." "You let her go?" yelled Hook. "Why, you called across the water to us," said Starkey. "Cut her cords," says you, and let her go." Hook went black in the face with fury. He was startled too. There was something cheating and creepy about all this. "I gave no such order," said he. Most likely it was a spirit," said Smee shakily. Hook raised his voice and cried, "What spirit haunts this dark lagoon? Spirit, hear me!" Peter instantly replied, in the very voice of Hook himself, "Odds bobs, hammer and tongs, I hear you." "Who are you?" demanded Hook. The voice replied, "I am James Hook, captain of the Jolly Roger." Hook shouted back, "That you are not! You are not!" The voice responded fiercely, "Say that again and I'll cast anchor in you." "If you are Hook," exclaimed the pirate captain, "pray tell me, who am I?" "A codfish, nothing but a codfish," said the voice. Smee and Starkey, who had been clinging together, drew back and regarded their leader with contempt. They muttered, "Have we been captained by a codfish?" Hook felt that he was losing hold of himself and of his men. He made a desperate attempt to recover, and suddenly a thought occurred to him. He cried out, "Hook, have you another voice?" Peter was taken off his guard. He answered gaily in his own voice, "I have." "And another name?" "Yes." "Are you vegetable?" inquired Hook. "No." "Mineral?" "No." "Animal?" "Yes." "Man?" "No," he said scornfully. "Boy?" "Yes." "Ordinary boy?" "No." "Wonderful boy?" "Yes." For Peter was now at the very top of his conceitedness. "Are you in England?" "No." "Are you here?" "Yes." "You'd better ask him some other questions," said Hook to his comrades. "I confess I am completely puzzled. This is no common spirit." "I can't think of anything to ask," said Smee. Peter began to crow. "Can't guess, eh? Do you give it up?" "Yes, yes," they shouted. "Well then, I am Peter Pan." Oh, the disgust of Hook to find that he had been beguiled by Peter. Oh, the joy of Hook to be once more in full command of his men and himself. "We've got him now," he roared. "Take him dead or alive." As he spoke, The gay voice of Peter cried, "Are you ready, boys?" And "Aye, aye, sir," resounded from parts of the lagoon. "Then lam into the pirates! Give them what for!" "Hurrah!" came the answer, and the short, sharp fight began. John tackled Starkey in the boat. Presently both leapt overboard. Smee wounded Tootles, but was himself pinked by Curly. Starkey, having escaped from John, attacked Slightly and the twins. Meanwhile, Peter was seeking his deadly enemy, Hook. The pirate captain, keeping every one at bay with his iron claw, crawled out of the water to breathe and climbed the slippery rock. Here he came plump against Peter, who had scaled it from the other side. Peter was bursting with joy. He snatched a knife from Hook's belt and was about to strike the villain when he perceived that he was higher up the rock than Hook was. It would not have been fighting fair to knife him, so he gave the pirate a hand to hoist him up, and Hook bit him. The unfairness of this bite, just when he was acting nobly, took Peter completely by surprise. He could only stare, quite helpless with horror and amazement. Then the iron hand clawed him twice, and for a while he knew no more. The third clawing would no doubt have done for the unconscious Peter, but rescue came from an unexpected quarter. Hook heard the dreadful sound. He knew that the crocodile was close upon him. He leapt into the water and struck out wildly for the ship, with the crocodile in slow but sure pursuit. By this time, the boys who had driven off Smee and Starkey had found the dinghy and were going home in it, shouting "Peter" and "Wendy" as they went. There was no answer, and they were a little uneasy, but not really anxious. They were sure neither Peter nor Wendy could come to any harm. Their calling died away in the distance. It was followed by a feeble cry, "Help! Help!" Two little figures lay upon the rock. Peter had drawn up Wendy there. She was in a faint. He fell beside her, fainting too. He saw that the water was rising, and that they would soon be drowned, but it could not be helped. He was quite done for. Presently a mermaid caught hold of Wendy's feet and was pulling her gently into the water, when Peter roused up just in time to draw her back. "The water will soon be over the rock now, Wendy," he told her. "The rock is getting smaller all the time." "We must go then," said Wendy. "Shall we swim or fly back?" "Could you swim or fly as far as the shore, Wendy, without me to help you?" "No, I am too tired." "But I can't help you, Wendy," he moaned. "I can neither fly nor swim. Hook has wounded me." "Oh, Peter, are you hurt? Then you mean we shall both be drowned?" "Well, look how the water is mounting." They sat with their hands over their eyes, that they might not see the water coming up over them, and something brushed lightly against Peter. He caught hold of it, and it was the tail of Michael's kite. It had pulled itself out of Michael's hand some days before and floated off. Now it had got some reason for returning. Peter saw the reason at once. He drew the kite in to him and cried. It lifted Michael right off the ground. "I believe it could carry you back." "Both of us, Peter?" she answered. "No, it can't lift two." He had tied the tail round her while she was speaking. Wendy clung to him and refused to go without him. She wanted to cast lots which should stay on the rock. But Peter was determined. He shoved her off. The kite took flight. She was lost to sight in a few minutes. Peter was left absolutely alone. There was only a small space now for his feet to stand on. The moon rose pale above the waters. The mermaids crooned wild songs to it. Everything was extraordinarily desolate. Peter had never been really, truly afraid in his life, but just for one shivery, trembly moment, he was afraid now. Then his fear passed, and he stood upright and smiling. Something was beating fast inside him. It might have been his heart, or it might have been a battle drum. He would not have been surprised if there had been a bugle as well. It was going throb, 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 and saying, "To die would be an awfully big adventure."